The ancient lamp in the desert. The desert was silent, except for the soft hiss of the wind blowing across endless dunes. The sun had set hours ago, but the sand still held the heat of the day. A lone figure trudged forward, his boots sinking with every step. His name was John Carter, an explorer who had spent years chasing myths that others had forgotten. John's face was covered with a scarf, and his eyes, sharp and determined, scanned the barren land. In his gloved hand he held an old torn map, a map that had led many to madness and despair. Tonight, it led him to the ruins of an ancient temple, half buried in sand. Its broken pillars reached toward the stars like the fingers of a dying giant. Lightning flashed suddenly in the distance, though there were no clouds. The air felt strange, heavy, almost electric. John took a deep breath and moved closer to the ruins. His heart pounded harder with every step. At the temple's center stood a cracked pedestal. Something glinted weakly under the sand at its base. Kneeling down, John brushed the sand away carefully. His fingers touched cold metal. He pulled out a small object, an ancient, golden lamp, carved with strange symbols that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. For a moment, John just stared at it. He had heard stories all his life, legends of magical beings trapped inside lamps offering riches and power to those bold enough to summon them. But those were only stories, right? Without fully realizing what he was doing, John wiped the tall lamp's surface with his sleeve. The ground shuddered beneath him. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder until it was a roar. The temple walls shook, stones crumbled. The stars above seemed to swirl in a circle. John stumbled back, shielding his face. Then from the mouth of the lamp, a beam of blinding blue light shot into the sky. The light twisted and danced, forming into the shape of a woman. No, something more than a woman. She floated above the ground, her long hair flowing like mist, her eyes glowing like twin suns. She wore robes of shimmering silver, and her skin gleamed with a soft, otherworldly light. John's breath caught in his throat. She was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. The being smiled warmly and spoke in a voice like music. "Greetings, Seeker. I am Zeriel, servant of the lamp. You have awakened me. As is the custom, you are granted 3 wishes." The desert went still. Even the wind held its breath. John stood frozen. His mind raced. 3 wishes. Anything he could ever want. Riches, power, immortality. Kingdoms could fall at his command. Worlds could bow to him. But instead of speaking, immediately John simply looked into Zeriel's golden eyes. He saw something there, something he did not expect. Sadness. Loneliness. A lifetime of serving masters who cared only for themselves. Zeriel tilted her head slightly, waiting. John lowered his hand slowly. His voice was calm but strong. "I wish for your freedom." The desert seemed to gasp. Zeriel's smile faltered. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her perfect face. She floated down gently, her feet barely touching the broken stones. What did you say?" she whispered, as if she had not heard correctly. "I said," John repeated firmly, "I wish for you to be free." For the first time, Zeriel looked uncertain. She placed her hand over her heart. "You understand what you ask? If you set me free, you gain nothing. No gold, no castles, no eternal life. Only my gratitude." John smiled softly. Maybe that's enough. Above them, the stars pulsed. Deep underground, ancient gears and locks that had not moved for 1,000 years began to stir. The very universe seemed to shift around them, sensing that something impossible was about to happen. Suddenly, a shadow moved at the temple's edge. John turned sharply, sensing danger. Dark shapes, barely visible, crawled out from the sand. Guardians, set by ancient powers to protect the curse of the lamp. Zeriel's face grew grim. "They have awoken. The Guardians." They will not allow me to be freed. John didn't hesitate. He picked up a broken sword lying near a fallen statue, its blade dull, but still deadly. He looked back at Zeriel and grinned. Then let's make sure they don't get their way. The night exploded into chaos as the first guardian lunged forward with a roar. John tightened his grip on the sword, ready to fight for the freedom of a being he had only just met. But somehow, deep in his heart, he knew she was worth it. A wish that broke the rules. The guardian's roar shook the crumbling temple. Sand poured from cracks in the walls as the ground trembled beneath John's boots. He tightened his grip on the broken sword, his heart hammering inside his chest. Across from him, the giant creature, made of stone and swirling sand, lurched, closer with every thundering step. Zeriel floated beside John, her silver robes glowing under the strange stars. Her eyes were wide, not with fear for herself but for him. She was bound by ancient laws. Until John's first wish was fulfilled, she could not lift a finger to help him, and John had wished for her freedom. "You must survive," Zeriel cried, her voice slicing through the chaos. "If you die now, my chains will never break." The guardian raised a massive arm to crush him. John didn't run. He ducked, rolling to the side at the last moment. The giant's fist smashed into the stone where he had stood, sending dust and rocks flying. Without thinking, John slashed at the creature's leg. Sparks flew, but the blade barely made a scratch. John panted heavily. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who had made a choice, one he didn't regret. Across the broken floor, Zeriel struggled against invisible chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles. They glowed a sickly green, pulsing with magic. She clenched her fists in frustration, her cosmic power bottled up, useless. The guardian turned again, slower but angrier. Its hollow eyes locked onto John. Another heavy step. Another. John backed, up toward the pedestal where he had found the lamp. His mind raced. Think, John. Think. Suddenly his boot bumped against something half buried in the sand, an ancient shield, dented and cracked but still strong. He snatched it up just as the guardian lunged. The impact threw him backward, but the shield absorbed most of the blow. Gritting his teeth, John rose shakily to his feet. Across the ruins, a second shape moved, and a third. 2 more guardians were waking up. Zeriel screamed, "They are multiplying! You must command me to finish your wish. Quickly." John looked at her, really looked, and saw the agony written across her face. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. John nodded once. "Zeriel," he shouted, "complete the first wish." The moment the words left his mouth, the green chains around Zeriel shattered with a deafening crack. The air exploded with light. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Zeriel rose higher into the sky, her hair whipping around her like a living storm. Her eyes blazed like twin novas. She raised her hand, and reality obeyed. With a simple gesture, she turned the 3 monstrous guardians into nothing but swirling sand. The roaring wind blew them away into the endless desert night. Silence fell. John dropped the sword and shield, sinking to his knees. Every muscle in his body ached. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but he smiled. He had done it. He had freed her. Slowly, Zeriel descended until she stood before him, no longer a servant, no longer bound, a true being of power, radiant and free. She knelt down beside him and touched his shoulder gently. "You are the first," she whispered, her voice trembling. "In all the ages I have served, no one has ever wished for my freedom." John chuckled weakly. "Guess I'm just full of bad ideas." Zeriel laughed, a beautiful ringing sound that seemed to heal the broken air around them. But deep in the shadows of the desert, something watched. Something ancient and cruel. A presence that had slumbered for thousands of years. And now, awakened by John's forbidden wish, it stirred with hunger and anger. Far above, the stars shifted again. The guardians of the wishes, the desert wind howled like a wounded animal. The ruins stood broken and silent, but deep beneath the sands, something ancient was waking. John leaned heavily against a shattered pillar, breathing hard. Zeriel stood beside him, her silver light dimmed slightly, her face troubled. Though the 3 guardians had been defeated, the air felt wrong, as if the battle had only been the beginning. Suddenly, a deep rumbling echoed from the earth itself. The ground beneath John's feet cracked open. A blinding green light burst upward from the depths, and from that light, 4 towering figures emerged. New guardians, larger and far more dangerous than the ones before. These were not made of sand or stone. They were made of pure cosmic energy, burning, shifting forms with glowing weapons in their hands. Their eyes were black holes, and every step they took crushed the ancient temple deeper into ruin. John staggered back, gripping his sword tighter even though he knew it was useless now. Zeriel's voice was low, filled with dread. "They are the true guardians," she whispered. "The protectors of the ancient order. They exist only to destroy those who break the laws of the wishes." John glanced at her. "And freeing you broke the biggest law, didn't it?" Zeriel nodded silently. The lead guardian raised a massive, glowing hammer and pointed it at them. A booming voice echoed across the night. "The punishment for breaking the sacred bond is death. Both mortal and Genie must perish." For the first time, John felt real fear claw at his heart. Not for himself. For Zeriel. She had just tasted freedom, and now she was being hunted for it. John stepped forward, raising his battered shield, standing between the guardians and Zeriel. "John, no!" Zeriel cried, reaching for him. "You can't fight them, you'll die!" John didn't move. "If I run now, what was the point of freeing you?" The ground shook as the guardians advanced. Suddenly, Zeriel's hands flared with light. But when she tried to attack, her magic sputtered weakly and died out. She gasped in horror. I can't. They have sealed my powers. I'm still too close to the lamp's curse." John gritted his teeth. His mind raced. He had 2 wishes left. He could wish for unlimited power. He could wish for a weapon strong enough to defeat these monsters. He could wish for escape, but somehow deep inside he knew, if he wished selfishly now, he would become no better than the ancient masters who had enslaved beings like Zeriel for centuries. No, he had to find another way. John turned to Zeriel, his voice calm but firm. "Trust me," he said. He sprinted forward, drawing the guardians' attention. Their cosmic weapons struck down toward him, but John dodged with surprising speed, using the broken pillars as cover. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to buy time. Above them, the desert sky twisted unnaturally. A portal began to open, glowing red at the edges. From that portal, unseen horrors prepared to spill into the world. Zeriel clenched her fists in frustration. "Think, Zeriel, think," she whispered to herself. She looked down at the broken lamp still lying in the sand. The lamp. Of course, the source of her imprisonment, and maybe their only hope. While John fought desperately, Zeriel gathered the last of her strength. She lifted the golden lamp high above her head and snapped it in half. A wave of blinding white light exploded outward. The lamp shattered into dust. The chains that had bound her for centuries vanished into nothingness. Zeriel rose into the air fully unchained for the first time. The guardians hesitated, too late. With a single outstretched hand, Zeriel summoned a torrent of starlight. The beam struck the first guardian, erasing it from existence. She turned, unleashing her fury on the others, moving faster than thought. Within moments, the battle was over. John collapsed to his knees, exhausted but alive. Zeriel floated down and landed softly beside him. She knelt, placing a hand gently on his cheek. "You believed in me," she whispered. John smiled weakly. "I didn't free you so you could die 5 minutes later." Above them, the portal closed with a deafening boom. The desert grew still once, more. But far beyond the stars, in a hidden corner of the universe, something even greater stirred. The Eternals, the rulers of Genie magic, had felt the lamp's destruction. And they would not sit idle. John and Zeriel had won a battle tonight. bond that should not exist. The silence after the battle was heavier than the fight itself. The broken temple glowed faintly under the twin moons, its shattered stones whispering of things that should have remained buried. John sat quietly on the edge of the fallen pedestal, his breathing shallow, his body sore and cut. Yet his eyes never left Zeriel. She floated just a few steps away, suspended in air, her silver robes flowing like smoke. Her glow had changed. It wasn't just freedom, it was something deeper, something unnatural. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked down at herself. "I feel different," she whispered. John managed to smile. "You look different too. Brighter." But Zeriel didn't smile back. Her golden eyes turned serious, troubled. She placed a hand gently over her chest. "This shouldn't be possible," she said. "The lamp is gone, my chains are broken. I'm no longer bound to any master, but I feel tethered, connected to you." John raised an eyebrow. "You mean like spiritually?" Zeriel looked at him with quiet intensity. "No, deeper than that. It's like part of my soul has fused with yours. That only happens in one case." She stopped herself. "In what case?" John asked, standing up slowly. Zeriel hesitated. A bond that only forms when a genie is not just freed, but when the wish is made without any gain or greed, no wealth, no power, no condition. John frowned. "Wait, are you saying I triggered some kind of magical soul link?" Zeriel nodded slowly. "Yes, and this bond, it's forbidden by the eternal laws. It was erased from history ages ago because it created something dangerous." John blinked. "Dangerous? Like what?" Zeriel floated closer. "When this bond is formed, the genie and the human are no longer separate. Their destinies become one. Their pain, their strength, even their emotions begin to mirror." Suddenly, John felt a strange pulse in his chest, warm, unfamiliar, like someone else's heart had just beat inside his own. His eyes widened. "You felt that, didn't you?" Zeriel said softly. John nodded, stunned. "That wasn't mine." Zeriel took a deep breath. "Then the bond is real." A strange silence followed. They both stood in the glowing ruins, now more than strangers, more than allies. Connected. But before they could speak again, the air around them cracked. A tear opened in the sky like glass shattering in reverse. From that tear stepped a figure, a tall robed being with 6 glowing eyes and no face. Its voice echoed without sound, directly into their minds. "You have broken the code of wishes. The soul bond must be destroyed." Zeriel gasped. "An eternal watcher." John stepped in front of her instinctively. "You're not hurting her." The watcher raised a hand. Everything around them froze. The wind, the stars. Even Zeriel's hair stopped moving. John suddenly couldn't breathe. Zeriel screamed, "Stop! He is bonded to me now. If you harm him, I die too." The watcher paused, then lowered its hand. Time resumed. John gasped for breath and dropped to his knees. "The bond protects you, for now," the watcher said, turning its gaze to Zeriel. "But it will destroy you both in the end. The universe cannot allow it to survive." With that, the watcher disappeared into the tear, and the sky sealed behind him. Zeriel rushed to John's side and helped him stand. "You see now?" she said, voice shaking. "We didn't just break a rule, John, we broke reality. The eternal court will come for us. We're not safe. Not anywhere." John looked up at her, weak but steady. "Then we run," he said. "Together." Zeriel stared at him. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This bond, it won't just make us hunted. It will change who we are. Slowly. Quietly. Completely." John nodded. "Then let it." She stared at him for a long time, searching his eyes. Then, for the first time, Zeriel reached out and touched his hand. Not as a genie, not as a protector. but as someone who had never been held without expectation. As their hands touched, the bond pulsed again. A flash of light, a whisper through time. Somewhere, far, far away, ancient machines began to wake. Locked doors opened, and a message spread across the stars. The last soul bond has returned. 2 wishes remain, but not for gold. The desert felt colder now, as if the stars themselves had turned their faces away. John and Zeriel stood hand in hand, still feeling the strange pulse of the bond between them. Around them, the broken temple was nothing but ruins and dust. But they both knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. John broke the silence first, speaking quietly. I still have 2 wishes left. Zeriel turned to him sharply, her eyes wide with alarm. No, John. You must be careful. Every wish now will echo across the stars. The Eternals are watching. John gave a small, tired smile. I'm not planning to wish for a mountain of gold, Zeriel. That was never why I picked up the lamp. Zeriel hesitated, floating just above the cracked stones, her silver light dim. You could wish for safety, she said. You could wish for strength. You could wish for weapons to fight them. John looked up at the swirling sky. He thought of all he had seen tonight. The chains, the cruelty, the loneliness in Zeriel's eyes. He shook his head slowly. No, he said. If I use my wishes for selfish things, then I'm no better than the monsters who made you a prisoner. Zeriel's lips parted, but no words came out. She had lived through thousands of selfish masters. Not one had ever said those words. John chuckled softly. I know what I want. He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the bond humming through him. Then, he spoke clearly, without hesitation. I wish that you could see the universe with your own eyes, Zeriel, not as a servant, not as a weapon, but as a free soul. The desert seemed to hold its breath. Zeriel gasped, her hands flying to her heart. Her body shimmered, brighter than ever before. You wished and for my dream, she whispered. John smiled at her gently. Everyone deserves to be free, to live, to wonder. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath them cracked open once again. But this time it was not violence that erupted. It was life. From the broken stones, a staircase of glowing light formed, leading upward into the sky. Above, a gate appeared, a swirling portal of gold and blue like the doorway to another world. Zeriel floated higher, tears shining in her cosmic eyes. I can leave this planet now, she said in awe. I can travel across galaxies. I can finally see the worlds I was never allowed to visit. She looked back at John, trembling. But what about you? You're only human. You cannot survive the journey. John shrugged lightly. I'm a terrible tourist anyway. Zeriel's face twisted with emotion. She flew back to him, hovering close, her hands reaching for his. You gave up everything for me, she said, her voice breaking. Your wishes, your safety, your future, why? John looked into her golden eyes and said simply, because you were worth it. Before she could answer, a sudden boom split the sky. John and Zeriel spun around. Far in the distance, black ships were descending from the heavens, sleek, sharp, and filled with hostile energy. At their center hovered a monstrous vessel bigger than a mountain, the flagship of the Eternal Court. They've found us, Zeriel said grimly. The Eternals are coming. John gritted his teeth. Figures. They couldn't stay mad at home. Zeriel touched his face gently. We must leave. Now. John shook his head. No. We can't run forever. We need a real plan. We need allies. We need... He trailed off, his eyes falling to the staircase of light. A crazy idea formed in his mind. What if your wish wasn't just about you seeing the universe? Zeriel frowned. What do you mean? John's smile grew. What if we used that portal to find others like you? Others who were enslaved, others who might fight back. Zeriel's eyes widened with hope and shock. You would risk your life to free others too? John shrugged. Why not? Freedom's not something you keep for yourself. The portal shimmered, as if answering his call. Zeriel hesitated no more. She grabbed John's hand firmly. Then let's start a revolution. Together they raced up the staircase of light, leaving the broken earth behind. But they both knew the real battle was yet to come. And somewhere, hidden in the darkness of space, others were already waiting for a human and a freed Genie to ignite a war that would shake the entire universe. Hunted across the stars, the universe opened its jaws wide. As John and Zeriel raced up the staircase of light, the golden portal swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was only blinding brightness, and then blackness. Endless cold blackness speckled with a billion distant stars. They landed roughly on the deck of an old abandoned starship floating alone in deep space. The metal groaned under their weight. Around them, giant broken vessels drifted like skeletons, remnants of ancient wars long forgotten. John stumbled, catching himself against a railing. Where are we? Zeriel floated beside him, her silver robes fluttering in the ship's stale air. Her eyes scanned the broken controls. A graveyard, she said softly. A place where battles ended, but anger never died. John's gut twisted. Perfect place to hide, or to get ambushed. A sharp siren blared through the ship. Red lights flashed. They found us already, Zeriel cried, spinning toward the darkness beyond the broken windows. Through the mist of shattered ships, black vessels surged forward, sleek, merciless, and fast. The hunters of the Eternal Court. They had followed the trail through the portal. John gritted his teeth. No time to run, huh? Zeriel clenched her fists, her energy flaring. I'll hold them off. You find a way to move this ship. John blinked. Me? I can't fly a spaceship. You can, Zeriel said fiercely, because you must. John muttered under his breath. I should have wished for a pilot license instead. He sprinted toward the dusty controls, yanking off dead vines and broken wires. Everything inside the ship was ancient, alien, and hostile. He had no idea what he was doing, but he had no choice. Failure meant death, and worse, losing Zeriel. Outside, Zeriel rose into the blackness, her hands glowing brighter than ever. The hunters attacked, firing beams of deadly crimson light. Zeriel twisted through them with stunning grace, reflecting shots with bursts of starlight. But they kept coming, relentless, endless. Meanwhile, John slammed random buttons on the console. Nothing. More flashing warnings. Come on, he thought desperately. Finally, his hand brushed over a smooth blue panel that hummed under his touch. The ship trembled. Engines that hadn't roared in 1,000 years sputtered to life. Zeriel heard the deep rumble and smiled grimly. John's voice crackled over the ancient speaker. Zeriel, grab something. With a roar of broken power, the ship jerked forward, blasting through the graveyard. Broken ships spun out of its path as it forced its way into open space. Zeriel dove back inside just as the airlock slammed shut behind her. She collapsed against the floor, laughing breathlessly. You did it! John slid into the pilot's chair, sweating and wild-eyed. Don't look too closely. I'm pretty sure I just insulted half the ship in alien language. They both laughed. But it was short-lived. On the scanners, more hunter ships blinked into view. Dozens. Hundreds. They're calling reinforcements, Zeriel said grimly. We can't outrun them forever. John tightened his grip on the controls. We don't have to outrun them. We just have to outsmart them. Zeriel looked at him curiously. John grinned. You said this ship is old, right? She nodded. Old ships have old tricks, John said. Let's give them a history lesson. He yanked the ship hard toward a dense asteroid field ahead. Jagged rocks spun wildly, colliding and smashing into dust. Zeriel's eyes widened. You're crazy. John grinned. Fighter. Yeah, but it's a good kind of crazy. Behind them, the hunter ships followed, sleek but built for open space, not chaos. John piloted the battered ship like a madman, weaving through the spinning asteroids. Hunters crashed left and right, explosions lighting up the darkness. One by one, the black ships were ripped apart by the deadly field. Zeriel clung to the seat, laughing through the terror. "You're not flying this ship. You're wrestling it," John shouted back. "Hey, it's working!" At last, only a handful of hunters remained. John spotted a massive asteroid spinning like a wheel. He turned sharply, firing the ship's last working thrusters. The hunters, too close behind, had no time to react. The spinning asteroid smashed into them with a thunderous boom, sending debris scattering into the void. Silence returned. John slumped back in the chair, gasping. "We did it," he said, amazed. "We actually survived." Zeriel floated beside him, looking at him with something deeper than gratitude, admiration, respect, maybe something more. But before either of them could speak, a soft beeping echoed from the ship's broken console. John leaned forward and frowned. "What is it?" Zeriel asked. John's face hardened. "It's a message," he said, "from someone who knows about the bond, someone who says they can help." Zariel's golden eyes widened. But far across the stars, unknown to them, an ancient figure watched from a hidden throne, smiling coldly. The soul bond had changed the game, and the universe would never be the same again. The final wish, and a new beginning. The ship floated silently now, hidden among drifting asteroids far from any living world. Inside, John and Zeriel stared at the blinking console screen, where a single message glowed in strange golden letters. "Know what you are. I can save you. Come to the forgotten planet." John leaned back, running a hand through his messy hair. "This feels like a trap," he muttered. Zeriel floated nearby, her cosmic glow dimmed by exhaustion and fear. "It could be," she agreed. "Or it could be our only chance." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Outside the windows, space stretched endless and cold. Finally, John pushed himself up. "We came this far," he said quietly. "We can't stop. Now." Zeriel smiled faintly. "You're the most reckless human I've ever met." John grinned. "You haven't met many, have you?" She laughed softly, and for a moment, the weight of the universe felt a little lighter. John set the ship's last working, engines toward the coordinates sent with the message. As they flew through the darkness, John's thoughts turned heavy. One wish. He still had one wish left, and whatever waited for them ahead, he knew in his gut. The final choice would change everything. The journey was long and silent. When the forgotten planet finally appeared before them, it looked dead, gray and broken, with jagged mountains and no signs of life. Yet as they landed, they felt it, an ancient energy pulsing deep within the ground. Zeriel floated closer to John, her hand brushing his. "Stay close," she whispered. They stepped off the ship into the dusty wind. Ahead, in the middle of a cracked plain, stood a lone figure wrapped in dark robes. His face was hidden, but his voice was clear as he spoke. "You have done what no one else dared. You have freed a genie. You have formed the bond." John stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" The robed figure lifted his head slightly. Beneath the hood there was no face, only shifting stars. "I am the keeper of forgotten truths," he said, "and I offer you a choice." John and Zeriel exchanged a quick glance. "What kind of choice?" John asked warily. The keeper's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You have one wish left, mortal. You can use it to break the bond, to free yourselves from the Eternal's wrath. You will be safe. Ordinary. Forgotten." He paused, then continued. "Or you can use your final wish to ignite a new age, to awaken the lost, the enslaved, the broken, souls scattered across the universe. But know this, if you choose that path, you will be hunted forever." John looked at Zeriel. She stared at him, golden eyes wide and shining. "I will follow you," she whispered. "Whatever you choose, John turned back to the keeper. The choice was clear. He had never picked the easy road before. He wasn't going to start now. John stepped forward, lifting his voice so the stars themselves could hear. I wish that no one would ever be chained again. The ground shook, the sky cracked. A wave of golden light burst from the planet, racing outward, touching distant worlds, forgotten prisons, lost spirits. Everywhere it touched, chains shattered, bonds dissolved. Slaves looked up in shock and wonder. Across the galaxy, beings of magic and power tasted freedom for the first time. Zeriel gasped as the light wrapped around her, strengthening her, lifting her higher. The keeper nodded solemnly. It is done. You have chosen war and hope. John turned to Zeriel. She hovered above him, her silver hair wild in the wind, her smile brighter than any sun. You're crazy, she said, laughing through her tears. John grinned up at her. Takes one to know one. They laughed together, even as the stars around them darkened with approaching enemy fleets. Because they knew they had started something that could not be stopped, not by the Eternals, not by fear, not by death itself. Together, hand in hand, John and Zeriel faced the future, a human and a freed Genie, bound not by chains, but by choice. And somewhere across the stars, the first fires of a rebellion began to burn. A new beginning. New legend, the bond that should never have existed and had just changed the universe forever.